All right, man. Mr. Ian Markow.
Yes.
We both have difficulties with our last names and people introducing us, but it's a pleasure to have you on the show, man. Again, to my wonderful audience of and maybe I think I have 15 people now since since building it up. So, but no, more people are listening to it, and bringing on people like yourself. I've been following you for a long time. Honestly, I think it was probably when I found Flowbility. I found you. I don't know. You had 8K followers at the time, and then seeing your content kind of blow up, and you're honestly probably one of the people that really inspired me to get on Instagram and just post, just kind of show what you're doing. And I like that you always had that relaxed approach. This is me. This is what I do. Take it or leave it.
Yes, I like that.
Man.
Yeah.
But how about you tell the audience, who you are, give your little elevator pitch, if you would, and then we'll dive into all this good stuff.
Absolutely. So my name's Ian Markow. I'm a personal trainer. I originally started my career in New York City. I worked out of Crunch, Goldman Sachs, Google, and then finally a physical therapy office before I branched out and then went completely independent contractor at a place called Encore Fitness in New York City. And now I work a ton online. I have a subscription model, which is classes. I have a course, which is Mobility Coach Plus for coaches. And I do a ton of one-on-one training online. So I basically, right before the pandemic started, I decided to move to Miami to partner up with my brother, who's a videographer and a photographer. So he kind of does the other half of the business. And we moved together, or I moved down from New York to move with him in Miami. And we just kind of, started setting up all of our systems. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, man, thank God we started doing this already. And, we're a couple of years into that process now. Things have evolved a lot. And I'm now getting back into training a lot more people in person because for a lot of reasons. Because I felt that something was really missing for me. I definitely lost a little bit of passion similar to how when you go to a certification and then on Monday, you're the most excited you have been in months, very similar. As soon as I started training people online, I started feeling like that, or in person, I started feeling like that again. So I'm getting back to doing that right now and just trying to manage everything. But yeah, man, it's a lot of people know me for mobility training, but then also people kind of get to me and then realize, wow, you actually are putting together a lot of different things, which is similar to what you're doing. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's kind of the future, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. I always like to piece together the similarities between different, protocols, systems, whatever you want to call them. And when you can pick those out and then you can sort of establish an exercise based off of those similarities, that then just gives you more tools in the toolbox for the person in front of you and whatever their goals are. And I think you do that fantastic because, you have the background, you got the Kin Stretch, FRC, a little bit of PRI in there, some flowbility. You're just kind of jack of all trades, if you would. And, I'd love to kind of pick your brain a bit on how you combine these and what you're really using and what do you enjoy using, I would say.
Yeah, it's an evolving process. Why don't we just kind of start from the beginning? So,
Yeah.
first and foremost, bodybuilding. I mean, I was the dude who was hitting the 7.5 side crunches with you don't even put the handle on, you're just crunching away, and then I'd superset it with a side bend on the back extension.
Right.
So I started off there, great abs, but I wasn't the best mover. I grew up playing basketball, so that's always been at the heart of everything. The way that I kind of gauge my overall success in the gym is really how well I'm playing in my basketball runs. So if I'm dominating in my basketball run, which is not a big feat, I'm not playing with really great people anyway, but that's where I'm the happiest when I leave that. So that's kind of my big marker as I'm gauging through all these different things and outcomes. But I started with the bodybuilding, then I got into some kettlebell stuff, which I think is a really great first start for any coach because the kettlebell is so versatile. When the pandemic hit, if you didn't know how to use a kettlebell and you got your client at home with nothing, it's kind of well, if I can just get you to clean and squat, you're gonna be pretty good, So the kettlebell was really good for me early on. Then I went into FRC. Dre like just completely blew my mind. I mean, he's so brilliant. He's such a great speaker. At first, I was really impressed with how well he moved. And just like seeing how mobile he was, seeing Dewey do like hanging scat cars at like 90 pounds or whatever he is, like just seeing all the positions that they could get in. I remember being at kin stretch and like everybody's like, all right, everybody go sit in your deep squat. And like me and my buddy Frank Duffy were like the only ones who couldn't sit in a deep squat. And I was like, man, I don't know if I found my tribe or I found where I need to be, but like I'm really bad at this. So I like jumped hard into that and I like became the FRC guy. Like I actually there was one point where I was running a mentorship of like other FRC people, like kind of how people do a PRI now, where it was just like, hey, I took FRC and I don't know how to do any of it. So like, can you explain it to me again? And I'm like, sure. All right, cool. So I even started doing that. And that was like my first time coaching other coaches, which was like way too early, honestly, like openly, but like it was still beneficial for everybody involved and it was cheap. So it was like, I think it was still good to do. I learned a lot there. I went into kin stretch, started teaching group fitness classes with that. That was huge. That was good. That great experience. I got to tour the USA and do all that, teaching classes. And group fitness brought me to a lot of really good places. It definitely brought me into Goldman Sachs. It brought me into Google. New York is unfortunately, other people might disagree. It's just an elite group of people. Just to be able to stay alive there, you can't just be you can't be a clown. It's just you're not going to make it. So that was such a great experience. And from there, then I got into a little bit of functional patterns. Actually, I did buy their courses and stuff. I know that's a terrible thing to say, especially today, because it is just the blimp is blowing up.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that stuff it's going down right now. It's gotten bad.
It's terrible, but I do still love some of their stuff. I think he was bullied, and at this point it's hard to not say rightfully so, but he was ahead of his time in some ways, especially like even just talking about gait training. A lot of people weren't even doing that, so I do want to give him his credit to a certain extent. I love the step to press, I love the step to row, so like those are certain things that are just the basics of that system, even though so many people have been like, yeah, well, Paul Check's the one who created that. I'm like, all right, I don't really care, dude. Like my client knows neither one of them.
Yeah, I got it from this course, give the credit where it is.
Yeah, exactly. So I did a little bit of that for a while. That didn't last very long, but I did do some of that. And then I did like Exos performance specialist. I did that. And then I started looking into PRI. I still have not taken a course. So I like to really be very upfront about that, because people always come to me like, yo, can you teach me PRI? I'm like, no, I haven't even done a course. And if there's anything you don't teach without doing a course, it's PRI. You know what I mean? Like that's the deepest rabbit hole ever. So I'm not going to do that. Somewhere along that way, I found, the compression expansion model and Bill Hartman and all that. Bill is like, he's just way too much for me personally. Like I don't understand anything he's saying, or at least I didn't understand anything I was saying, but I knew he was great. So that's kind of how I like to learn. Also, I really enjoy being thoroughly confused before I can actually like really break through, because if I just get it right away, then I probably won't continue it. I like to really be stumped. So then I actually found David Gray, who was incredible. He was such a big part of my like last, maybe not the last year, but like before that, the 2 years before that, he was unbelievable for my growth. He was the one who kind of comfortably said it as, I'm going to bastardize PRI and I'm going to credit them, but I'm also going to show you value within that. And it became so much more simpler than like, do I need to do an adductor pullback on the left, or do I need to get right glute max on the right? What if I do left glute max? Am I going to die? And then instead, David was just like, just do scissor slides on both sides and do 3 of them. And I'm like, yo, I like this guy. Like, this is so much better. And my clients started feeling better. Some of them that were doing FRC were like, well, now my pelvis is moving a little different and my hip car feels better. And I was like, oh, we're on to something, So that was really big. And David's been really great. Unfortunately, David didn't have the setup for me to truly be mentored by him. It was more of like, buy my programs and I would ask him to do a session. He'd be like, yo, I think you got it. Like, you got it. And I'm like, whoa, like, no, I'm literally trying to pay you thousands of dollars to be one-on-one with you right now.
Please
like,
teach me, tell me.
Yeah, exactly. But like he wasn't, and he's cool. We're cool. Like I'm friends with him, but like we never really got to that next level.
He's blown up. I mean, he's super busy now. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure he's bringing on, like, he's got a full team and everything now.
yeah, exactly. So he was just a little too Hollywood for me at the time as a peasant that I was. But I still learned a ton from him. I enjoyed it. I use a lot of his stuff. Or what I did was I actually was like, hey, if you don't want to teach me, like, show me where I can go. And that's where I started going to Gary Ward, and I love Gary Ward's course. I don't know how many people. I don't know if people have bought FRC more or Gary Ward's course. For me, probably Gary's because it's so cheap. But
Yeah.
like Gary's closed chain lower body biomechanics course blew my mind too. I had no idea how the foot worked at all. I just thought ankle cars and toe lifts, and then I learned what pronation and supination was. That blew my mind.
Right.
So that was really big. And then around the same time, I found Flowbility. So I had been following Jordan, who's Flowbility's mentor, Pillar Principles, for a very long time. He was like someone that just instantly stood out to me. I was like, how is everybody deadlifting like that? But then he deadlifts like this. Like that just blew my mind. So that was something that I took a deep dive into. I started doing their programming and working with them, and then I got autoimmune disease, or I got diagnosed with it, and like my health just went apart. So like I couldn't really walk, let alone like do power CAD and all these other things that they wanted me to do. So unfortunately, what happened was I basically saw the value. I started teaching it as soon as I got what I thought was an okay grasp to get started. And our relationship went sour because I was teaching it and I wasn't, working with him one-on-one or this or that. So he went from being like my really good friend that like we did a YouTube episode with him. I had been promoting him on all of our platforms, just like we do with everybody we learn from, to being someone that blocked me on Instagram, and he killed our relationship out of nowhere. And I was like, all right. So he recently unblocked me too. I got to reach out to him. Jordan, if you're listening, I'm gonna hit you up eventually. But that was really good. That was really great. I think it was really cool because, Flowbility does have a lot of similarities to other things, but it also is so different, because like getting your sit bones high is the exact opposite of what PRI wants you to do. And I think that's why, again, similar to back in the FRC thing, people hit me up all the time like, yo, can you teach me Flowbility? I'm like, why wouldn't you just go to them? Like, if you want it all mixed together specifically for you, that's who you come to me. But if you want to learn just that, follow the guy who's been doing it for 6 years. Like, you can see my upper back looks like a pancake, dude. I'm not in that shit every day. Like, just because my clients look really good, that doesn't mean that you want to come to me. If you want to come to me for everything, So that's been an interesting part of it. But yeah, and then lastly, and honestly, arguably most important, got to give my guy a shout out, Alex Effer. He's really been the first one who like truly mentored me and really built a relationship with me. He had the setup. I did his Evolve. I learned so much and nothing at all at the same time. I was just kind of like, man, I don't know anything again. How does he see stuff? Like his ability to see fucking two things and know what to do after it is second to none. Like I've never encountered anything like it. So the past couple of months, I've been paying his ass way too much money to meet with him every single week, and we do hours together.
Are you in the Vault mentorship?
No, I'm not in the Vault because I wanted to like be super specific with it, because I really think that is like, if money is aside, which for me it is in this circumstance, because it's really not that expensive for how much value I get from it, to be honest.
Yeah,
but
Alex, you could be charging a lot more if you're listening to this.
Yeah, you could, but don't yet, because
let us talk to you.
I still got like another month or two with you before you release me into the wild fully. But yeah, I've been working with him, and it was cool to get really confused from Evolve and then do the one-on-one sessions with him. And I'll literally just bring him case studies. We'll go through assessments. So like, I remember the first time I brought him assessment, I was like almost like low-key worried, because I was like, I got to get their survey, I got to get their hip IR, I got to get their shoulder IR. He's like, yeah, just show me their toe touch and their straight leg lift, and we'll go from there. I don't know why I did his voice like that, but you know what I'm saying. But
it's like, the best Canadian accent.
Yeah, it's terrible. That was terrible. But and then he just like knew exactly what to do from there, and like people are just like melting. And now the way that I do it is, I basically use Alex's his approach. and I do it in the form of what I call like a secret sauce. So whereas before I would have someone do the flowability breathing drills in the morning, or I would have them do their cars in the morning. Now I have like this kind of hybrid, which is the secret sauce that's really got a lot of Alex in it, and it's these 3 exercises that we want to like, all right, we're going to turn your pelvis left. All right, we're going to bring it back. And then, all right, I'm going to get you onto your right midfoot. You know, like those 3 exercises that someone does every morning. And they're so specific to them that it really breaks through in my experience. And it's so tough though, because we have so many people in the industry that would say the exact opposite, right? Like hating on corrective exercise, hating on this, but like realistically, I think it's really just they don't have the ability to do it that high level, because when you actually get the right thing and they just like fall into place for you and you're like, all right, now you can do whatever you want, like that is such a powerful thing. So
Yeah,
I know that was pretty scattered, but hopefully that was a good intro to all that.
definitely. No, totally, man. Like, and I, again, have to give credit to Alex. Like, he's taught me. I'm in the vaults. I've been through 2 of the Evolve mentorships. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. So if you're listening to this and you're a coach, highly suggested go pay Alex some money, because he is also just a good human being. But
Yeah.
that said, like, I like what you said about finding ways to get more specific and sort of the like people hating on corrective exercise. Like, I've been trying to figure out what, and even like functional exercise, if you would, like that's just been demonized so bad in the past year. But I don't really know what to call this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
It kind of is functional, that is corrective. But if you say that and you post it online, everyone's gonna call you an idiot, like that you're full of it. But no, like you said, like just finding those specific, it's a higher level that you have to be at to see those movements. And a lot of the times, it's like from the testing, it's like to see the small little cheats that people do to get around like a restriction. Like, yeah, you can touch your toes all day, you can palm the floor, but how you do that, like that's what we're looking at, is how you get there. And
Yeah,
that's super
absolutely.
powerful, and how you can kind of piece together a program. It's super specific to that individual. And then, like you said, you can start, it doesn't matter about the exercise. It's really just whatever shape you make with their body. So you can use a flowability shape, you can use a car, whatever the heck it is, you just know what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's tough. And I think that that's what's holding most people back, is it's
Right.
tough as the consumer to conceptualize that, oh, I'm gonna do like every single time I give someone something asymmetrical, they're like, yo, am I gonna fuck up my left side? And I'm like, nah, you're good. Like,
Right.
don't worry about it. And they're like, they do it, and they're like, wow, I feel way better on my left side. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? But like to get to that level of executing there and then putting it all together is just there's a reason that there's not a million Alexes or a million Ron Hureskas out there, because like it really is that tough. And the other thing to think about, and I think about this from my FRC lens, and you get so deep into dynamic systems theory that like the truth is your compensation is a solution. So like if it's
Exactly.
not causing you pain, it's really not that big of an ideal. And then you need to take that context of where FRC came from, which is what I think a lot of people miss. And they're not seeing that Dre is kicking people in the face or rolling on the ground with them in any position that gets molded into the ground. So like where you see someone like Flowbility, if you want to look like Jordan or Eric, Pillar Principles, or Karan, or any of the homies, like you're not gonna do that by segmenting your spine. Like you're
Right.
not gonna look like that. But at the same time, I would say, and I know this is something I've argued with Jordan about a lot, like if you're constantly in those positions and you don't necessarily have access to those compensations, you might not do so well rolling around with a black belt either. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's just it's an interesting thing to think like, does it even matter? And then I'll bring in someone else who I didn't mention, and that's Kyle Dobbs, who he drives me nuts sometimes, and then he also like makes me love him because like he challenges your beliefs so well.
Oh yeah.
But like, that's one of the things that, has brought, like, does it even matter? Because like,
Mhm.
I have a client that I just finished with this morning. He's been my client forever, 2 years. He's gone from 5 degrees to 15 degrees of hip IR and back and forth over the years. And he's had no injuries. He's had like maybe QL tightness for like 2 weeks. The guy runs like so many miles. He's got a 6 pack. He's got biceps. Like he's got everything he could possibly want. But you know what? Like so what? He doesn't have 40 degrees of hip IR. It only matters if I bring it up.
Right.
And we're on our like third, which is also cool. So shout out to the clients that actually stick with you through your seventh intervention of a different
Yeah.
system. Cause like I love those people that are like, yeah, oh, we're doing something totally different. Let's do it. But like he's been with me on so many things, and now we're giving him the secret sauce through Alex's lens and like seeing how it works.
Mhm.
And it's been interesting, but it's definitely a cool process.
Definitely. Definitely. No, and I think just to add on to your bit about, Jordan and flowability and hanging out in this one position. Again, if we think of dynamic systems theory or even just PRI, anything, it's all about variability, right? So it's just, and I've been playing around with this in terms of like periodization and strength training as well. It's like there's going to be times when you should probably have more variability in your programming. So like, here's a block. Let's make you move just well and trying to decompress you, because we just came out of like the most compressive shit, like 5x5s, all this stuff. So like, let's get that variability back. Let's then kind of build back up into more compression, and then go into more like of an expansion type principle. And like, that's that wavering back and forth. And we've been doing that for years. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at periodization, that's literally what it is. It's just maybe being more specific to the exercise selection for that person. But I remember when I first, like, I've taken respiration and I took the PRI fitness course, and every single exercise I was doing, as curled as I could get, doing zerchers. I mean, lunges, reverse lunges, step ups, everything. I was like, I got to like hyper flex everything. And I truly think that is something that actually led to injury after the fact. Like, it cleared up a hip impingement. But then on the other side of the spectrum, I'm sitting there doing heavy ass trap bar deads, hyper flexed. And then, we know what flexion can do, especially when you're cheating it,
Yeah.
right? Like, especially when you're someone like a narrow ISA like myself, and you're flexing at the lumbar spine versus actually getting like a counter nutation at the pelvis. Like, you have to have access to all of it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm rambling at this point.
No, no, no. I agree with you. And I think two things. First, quick shout out to Jake Turr, because I didn't mention him, but man, I love Jake Turr so much. Love his
Dude,
stuff.
he cracks me up.
You said 5x5, and I was like, oh wait, mention Jake, because I crush clusters with my clients.
Clusters is one of
dude,
the most fun programs.
Incredible. So anyway, shout out to Jake, even though you have no idea who I am. But anyway, I still fuck with you. But to your point, and what we're talking about with flowability, one of the things about flow though, and I love to think about it against PRI, is because nobody in PR, like, I don't ever look, no offense to the people if they're listening, but I don't ever look at someone doing a lot of PRI and go, man, I want to look like them. And then another even more important point is PRI is not training, right? So like, people will be like, how can I get into training PRI? And I'm like, you don't, because it's not training. So, like yeah, exactly. So like, well, how can I get into taking 10 steps back? It's like, well, you only take those steps back if you need them, and you should get assessed, right? But like, that's a huge difference, where I don't see anybody, FRC especially, that can flex their upper thoracic spine like the flowability crowd can. Yeah. They just can't do it. And that's what sold me on flowability, honestly, is like, I'm sitting here doing all these little, segmental drills. I'm banded up. I'm squeezing the med ball against the wall. I got all this, and I still look like a pancake, And it's like, all right, well, breathing's missing. If you asked Dre about breathing a couple of years ago, he would have just been like, just breathe however you want. It's like, all right, cool, man. Yeah, it's not that important. Anyway, right? So like, and then also like, you realize that what flowability does, and the way that I like to describe it to my clients, is they train up. And I don't think anybody else trains up, because that's what you're doing is like, people, like, for example, when I'm with Alex, I'll be like, I'll show him my client Carlos, who's like the person who's gone the farthest with flow. Like, they definitely have the most changes, and he'll be like, oh, that's a compensatory shrug, and I'm like, no, that's a upward, like, that's strength. Like, you don't understand what that feels like to be pushing and reaching like that. Like, that's strong. That's not a compensation, but it's hard to like really, we haven't, Alex and I haven't done the flowability, what do you call it when you do like someone's dead and you open them up, autopsy.
Yeah.
We haven't done the flowability autopsy. We'll do that one day. But basically, like that thought of training up is really what separates flowability to me. And like the whole slogan that Pillar Principle started with, the length is strength. And that,
Right.
again, like we talked about finding similarities. Well, like Dre is going to tell you length is strength. Length is the greatest potential for strength. And it's like, yeah, right. Gary Ward's going to say muscles need to lengthen to contract. All right, great. Right. So, like, you see all these little similarities, but then, like, all right, how come nobody looks like they do? And then to throw it back, you add a little bit more into the pot. I remember arguing with Jordan and being like, why am I playing basketball and I need to step back, but nothing I'm doing has anything to do with my quads? We're just like letting my quads die. Like when I was doing flowability, I looked
Hmm.
like SpongeBob in the front and I looked like thick as fuck in the back, which is
Yeah.
cool. I had like a nice little top cakes and everything, but at the same time, like I need to step back. I have to move laterally. I got to move all over the place, and I don't have time to, shift into my hip like that. And it just didn't translate for me in that way. I felt. And then we would always get into these arguments with Jordan, and then like he was so great for my growth, and I believe I was great for his. But we ended up, he'd say, "All right, well here's Deion Sanders. He didn't have any quads, and it would be him like going back in a cornerback." And I'm like, he might not look like he has huge quads, but I guarantee that he could leg extension a lot. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like there's that other thing that gets put into play, I think, especially with flowability, is you get so hypersensitive about your posture that a lot of the practice is built on shape of your spine and not necessarily what you're going to do after it. So
Right.
that's a big thing that I see with that kind of crowd.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and the hypersensitivity about posture, that's the same stuff when it comes to PRI to some degree too. I
Yeah.
mean, like, especially I find that practitioners, when they're fresh out of a course, like they're always like pushing, like, sensation. Like you have to be able to feel this certain stuff. And, you tell that to, it's different. Like you and I talking, like we can kind of put it in perspective, but someone who's a client and they're like, at their desk, just trying to like doing analytics or something, like, and they're constantly thinking about sensation or like the shape of their spine, that's going to drive them crazy,
Yeah.
and I think that can ruin a good program in a way. It could ruin that relationship, and it just gets people like too much in their head when at the end of the day, this stuff should be unconscious. Like you go to take that step back and like, take a shot, you're not, last thing you want to think about is your quads or like the shape of your
Yeah.
spine. Like you're trying to, hit the basket and make the play, get a rebound, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. That's where I always try to make sure that all this stuff leads. And I always tell people like this needs to turn unconscious throughout this process. Like there's some things like here's a cue, like here's one cue about your posture, like find your heels, whatever. Like
Yeah.
that's all I want you to think about. But the other that, going through my flowability stuff, that was, and also functional patterns at the same time with PRI, I was so stuck in my head. It was
Yeah.
it was a lot at one time.
Well, naughty is like what you're describing, like where you can go too far down the road, like you just end up like naughty. It's like this all the
Dude,
time, you know
all
what I mean?
those before and afters, I'm sorry. Like they are literally them all chambered up.
Yeah.
Like just it pisses me off.
Yeah, it's
They're
very obvious for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it's tough. The thing that I always tell people is like your training and your exercises, they put you in a successful position so that you don't have to think about it. So like
exactly.
don't do hook lying and then go, oh, how am I walking? Or don't do an arm bar and be like, is my right arm swinging more? No, just like go walk and just
Right.
trust the process. And that usually works really well for me. But you're always going to have those people that are so hypersensitive about it, and they get hypersensitive about the asymmetries too. That's where
Yeah.
that's honestly where I took a step back from PRI, where I was like about to take a course, and then I was like, yeah, I don't know, I like Alex, I'm gonna go over there.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, and I like to learn from people that have been in the trenches, if you would. Like I'd go to them
Yeah,
before I would, necessarily like, I've taken my courses and that was great and it was nice, but I would much rather like talk to someone like Alex who he's been doing this. He's wrestled with the courses. He's talked to other people and like really he's looked at a lot of bodies, if you would.
Yeah.
and put together like, okay, he's trying, like it's that trial and error aspect of this that, there's not a lot of people doing it, like folks like you and I, and then, Alex is way ahead of the game in terms of that. But I think
Yeah.
that there's another generation that, think about like where Alex is going to be by 2030. Think about like where folks like you and I, and just like all the people we consistently see, and then applying some of these other, just typical training principles to it. I'm curious to see if we'll see, or if we will continue to have I mean, it's always based on the goals. I wish there was a way, like a metric, like an actual like injury prevention metric that we could measure over the next 10 years with applying this stuff. Or if there was a
I don't.
metric, well, yeah,
I
fair.
don't. I don't. I don't. Don't even go there. Don't even
It
go
would
there.
be,
That's like
yeah,
going that's like, okay, you know how they have that classic meme where the car's on the highway about to go left or right?
yeah,
You've been killing it with the memes lately, but this could be one. If you go left, you're hyper focused on your posture. If you go right, you're hyper focused on injury prevention,
that's
and both of
true.
them end up burning.
It's too
And
much.
it's just it's not provable, and it's just
Yeah,
like you're focused on the wrong thing when you're thinking about injuries, especially when someone's coming to you with pain because they're already
100%.
thinking about it. The
That's
whole
the GOTA
point.
stuff, like in
Yeah,
functional patterns. And
the whole point is to turn them around and be like, forget your old injuries. Think about the pull-ups you want to do. Think about
right,
being able to play with your kid on the ground. Like you hit
enjoying
them that
life.
180. Yeah, exactly. So like when you start talking about injury prevention or even trying to quantify it,
That's
I
true.
think that we take a step back because that's what FMS tried to do. And
Yeah.
FMS was the only good enough system to even get a real study. So like people hate on that too, but like, do I use it? Definitely not. Do I think it's great? No, but at least it's something. Like at least they tried, you know?
Yeah, it's a stepping stone, if you would, right,
Exactly.
into everyone progressing. So I guess maybe instead of an injury, I always go in that direction just because I also worked with a lot of people with injuries. But
Absolutely.
in terms, maybe it would be more of a find some way to objectify people's enjoyment, like find like an
Yeah.
objective measure, like, okay, the next 10 years, like, can we use these PRI principles or flowability or whatever it is? And people are just like having a good time and they're actually seeing progress in what they want to do. But, and that's like Kyle Dobbs stuff. It's like, do you need that stuff to have a good
Yeah.
time? Or do they
Yeah.
think that they need that stuff to have a good time and get to
Because
the
we
goals that
told them.
because we told them, or they saw that
Yeah.
on Instagram, or they watched a YouTube video that thought like, oh, that's me. That's 100%
Yeah.
me. Like, I tell a lot of people, I'm like, I don't, because I do like a free assessment, and plug, if you want a free assessment, you can do a free assessment
Yeah.
with me. But whenever they do that, I tell them, I'm like, I don't care what system you use at all. Like, just one, make sure it's enjoyable. Two, they should be exercising. Like, they should load you up.
Yeah.
And three, just be consistent. Like, give it, 3-6 months and really try it and put some time into it and see like the shape changes that can come from it, or the mobility changes that can come from it. And then, go from there. And as long as
Yeah.
they're loading you up, you're probably going to see some progress throughout that.
Absolutely.
And
I agree with that.
yeah, like, if you do yoga or Pilates, like, I don't give a shit. Like, go for it. If
They,
you like it and you enjoy it, more power to you. Like, at least you found something that's active that you enjoy. Whereas a lot of people, I mean, we have so many, the obesity epidemic, so many people just hate moving.
yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, we have to keep that in mind, especially as trainers, or rehab professionals. It's like people don't like to move. They don't want to move at all.
Yeah. Which
It's a
is sad.
hard, yeah, it really is. But it's also hard to, I think, in some ways, make a living, because we're literally we're selling the long approach. We're
We should
selling,
be.
yeah, exactly.
Me and you are, but not
Yeah,
everybody
and
else.
that's hard,
I
dude. It's hard.
I get ads for 30-day splits. This dude's in full splits in 30 days. I'm like, I don't know. I've worked with I've gotten a lot of people splits, and like they did not happen in 30 days.
That's what I'm saying. Or like, like the bulletproof programs. I had some guy like calling me. He's like, "You're ignorant. I can't believe you're like, talking shit about bulletproof programs." I'm like, dude, just go lift. Just like do a general lifting routine. You don't have to do 20 exercises for your knee or for your
Yeah.
ankle or whatever. Like, it's also a different view too. Like, after taking Alex's course, it's like it's the whole body. It's not a single joint at all.
No.
It's a
No,
dynamic system that has to be, with the variability that we've been talking about. But I think you got anything to add to that? Because I'm about to pivot to
no,
another
no,
topic.
no, no. I think we killed that. That was good.
Yeah, man. So in terms of, I haven't seen a lot of FRC or kin stretch in a long time. I'm just curious what happened. Like,
Um,
they just kind of like fall off? Are they just not promoting it as much? People not using it?
okay. I thought you were talking about with me. So you're talking about just like
No,
in general. Oh, you just gotta follow them, man. They're out
they
there.
are. Okay.
Yeah. No, yeah, they're
I
they're
think I
doing
honestly
great.
just unfollowed a bunch of stuff. They
Yeah,
were
you
like,
probably
I don't,
did. They're doing great. They're
good.
fine. Dre has a very big house. I'm sure he's probably killing. He's probably killing it. I'm sure Chivers is happy. I love Chivers. That's my other guy. He's if I was more of a manual therapist, I think Chivers would have been a bigger impact on me. But he was a big impact even from the little bit that I learned from him.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're doing great. They're doing great. They just did the FRS strength model. It looks cool. I'm just I don't feel like I've learned everything they know. Obviously, that would be silly to say, but I feel
Mhm.
like I have such a good grasp at what they're already doing. Like I honestly almost feel, as crazy as this to say, that I could look at their Instagram post, which I really don't even do either, but I could look at the FRS strength model Instagram post and be like, yeah, I get it. All right, cool. So
Yeah.
you're doing this on top of the stuff that you taught me before. All right, great.
Right.
And like, sure, I could get to that level of specificity, but like it's very similar again. It's like, why do we need to go so far down there? Like, for example, like, why do 5 hip mobility exercises if you can do a split squat? Like it's kind of
Right.
like super simple. Like, that's really the whole thing broken down into one sentence. Like, maybe do 5 hip cards in your warm up, then do your split squats, like you're good. You're going to get a lot out of that. And I've seen people get a lot out of that because, to do FRC, to do any of these things that we're talking about every day, like for me and the clients that I have, it's not happening, dude.
Yeah.
But to do flowability on your rest day, to do FRC in your warm up, to do weightlifting for upper body on Tuesday, and then to have your active recovery day have some functional pattern stuff in it. Now I'm signing up for that. That's the
Yeah.
type of thing that I like, and that's what people are starting to come to me for, which is what I like, because I don't want someone like, for example, I had like this like billionaire client in Miami the other day that I went to her house. It was like, just as crazy as you can imagine. Like, you're walking into a movie, the whole floor is her apartment. And we sit down and I go through my questions. And at the end, she said, "Do you have any questions for me?" And she goes, you know, I guess I'm wondering what kin stretch is and like what we're gonna do with it. And I'm just like, the whole time I'm thinking about like her injury history and everything, and I'm like, there's nothing from kin stretch I'm gonna teach you today. Like,
Yeah.
I'm literally so far from showing you anything. Like, you need hook line and you
Yeah.
need short foot. Like, that was literally our first session. Like, that's it. So like, people that come to you looking for only that system, that usually is a turn off for me, because I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to give you what you need. And if you really hate it, I'll give you the second option because I want you to be happy doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's a tough part too. And with marketing, like everything's so hyper focused. Like knees over toe guy. Like
Yeah.
everything he does is about knees over toe. And like the liver king. Like, dude, he just like just crushes raw liver. Like, what the like everyone's just like hyper focused on one topic. And it plays on like this human psyche, like that we have, where it's like, oh well, it's this one thing. And I mean, granted, like that's the only way we can probably get anyone's attention anymore.
Yeah.
And like when you said, like it's hard, like trying to sell like the lawn approach. It's like, well, you need all of this. And I like to tell people, there's one blueprint for the human body, but there's how many systems out there,
Yeah.
right? Like you got to be able to, not
That's
one
why
is going to fix you.
I think you kind of find solace in knowing that like you're gonna lose people. Like, that's another big thing that I think maybe Kyle kind of helped me with this a lot, but like the idea of like, stop talking to other trainers,
Yeah.
start talking to your people. Realistically, another thing that kind of gets me a little bit upset, not upset, but just annoyed, is like, people will come to me and be like, "Oh yeah, I love how you use PRI so much." And it's like, again, I didn't do the course, so like I don't like,
Yeah.
yeah, their principles have affected me, but like I don't want to like, because I feel bad for them to like think like, because they're looking at me and being like, he doesn't even have his medial heel down, like, you know what I mean? They're like, this is wrong, it's like I don't want to be the guy that's like really messing up their
Yeah.
messaging. So it's like you have to find solace in the fact that like the clients are going to find the results, and that's what's going to sell it, and it's going to take longer. But like, for example, we just started getting really good testimonials, and I'm like, how many years into my career, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know how Connor does it. Like, just everybody's like, yeah, let me just give you a video testimonial. But like, like when you get those, I think that's what should really be selling your stuff. There's this guy that my brother and I do a lot of market research. So like, one of the things that we'll do is we'll find someone who we think is really successful, doing things that we're doing. And one of the things that we're trying to do is do a better job of building a community, because it's so hard,
Yeah.
because YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, and then now I have the Facebook group too. It's like,
Oh
how can I
God.
possibly put something everywhere, right? But in this Facebook group that this dude has, his name's Tom Morrison. He's from the UK. It's like the simplest stuff you could ever imagine is his program, which is good. And something we've learned from. This guy has 5 to 6 people post in his Facebook group every single day. I'm doing the program. My left shoulder finally settled in, and it's all bad stuff. The deep lunge, like the world's
Mhm.
greatest stretch, where you put your elbow on the ground. Like, I've seen 7 people in this thing say like, "Hey, my groin is pinching when I'm in it," and I'm always like sitting there thinking like, "Is it your left or right?" You know what I mean? Like, I'm like problem solving for him in his own Facebook group just to
Yeah.
research it. But like, it's incredible what he's done and the results he's getting. Like, again, even though I'm saying like, "Hey, like this guy's pinching," the same person 3 weeks later might be feeling really good in that group. And like, to see how he's cultivated the group was something that was really incredible to me. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that, because that's big and it's really tough to do.
Yeah, dude, that's one of the hardest things to do. I'm with you. I've thought about doing like the Facebook groups, but it's just I'm one person, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
You can get spread
hard.
too deep. You can get
Yeah.
spread too thin for
Well, and
sure.
especially like, it sounds like you're doing a lot of online one-on-one. That's what I do primarily is online
Yeah.
one-on-one. And with that, it's like, man, I'm programming, I do all that. And then I'm lucky if I've got a YouTube video I've been working on for like 2 weeks now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I still gotta like cut and edit and do all this stuff. And, I would say like props to Connor, watching him grow and everything that he's done, but he's done a great job of what's the word I'm looking for? Of hiring out,
Well, you
like,
need to. That's what I was
yeah,
just about to tell you. Get on Fiverr, man. Like,
yeah,
and I think a lot of us don't really do a good job of that because it's so hard. Because realistically, like, yeah, if you want to go to the next level and get beyond, like, everybody's always like, "Oh, you're gonna make 100K," and it's like, all right, that's cool, but like with inflation and everything, like, you're not rich, like, you
yeah,
should have seen the
exactly.
place. You should have seen the apartment I went to yesterday. They wipe 100K away easily. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like, if you want to get to that next level and like really be what I would think of killing it, like, you know who the 2 people that are my kind of like my dream kind of careers is. I would love to be a hybrid of Ben Bruno and PJ and Paul Fabrice. Like, Paul's home is like, dude, like, come on, like, how
Yeah.
incredible is this guy's home? He's got all the plyo stuff, he's got all the equipment. He's like, it's like
Right.
incredible. And then Ben is just like, I'm trying to get my clients to like tell somebody on a video about how they have no hip pain anymore. This guy's got Chelsea Handler doing full on skits. It's
Yeah.
like incredible. But like, if you want to get there, you have to have somebody else behind the scenes. Obviously, Alex is that for me, but even Alex, my brother, doesn't even edit our videos anymore. That motherfucker is referring out himself,
Oh
and he's an
God.
editor.
Yeah.
So like, that's really what I think early on we have to do. And unfortunately, the industry, one of my least favorite parts about it is like, when you fail at coaching or like you don't do that well at coaching, you immediately turn into the guy that's like selling 100K promises because I'm going to build your business with these funnels. And that market is so saturated that like none of the really good coaches that could actually help you are even like breaking through. I feel like
Yeah.
it's all the BS people that I hate to like, it's so cringy. I hate when they
Hmm.
DM you and they're like, hey man, how you doing? Notice your stuff, really like it. I didn't follow you, haven't seen any of your posts, but I am saying I love it. And you're like, oh, great. I always reel them in. I go, oh, thanks so much for following. And they're like, oh, yeah, no problem. It's great. So anyway, I was wondering if we could talk about your business and blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, man, A, you're not following me. So I was being sarcastic and no, I'm not interested at all. Let's just skip to that part. I even had someone who was like a big name in Miami. He hit me up in a similar way. And I was like, God, I know some people that know this guy. Like, I don't want to be too like
Hmm.
straightforward with him, but I'm like, whatever. So he's like, yeah, man, I'd love to talk to you about some opportunities for you. So like, can we get on a call? Like he was really wishy-washy with the way that did it. And then we got on the Zoom and I was like, I don't know what to expect. I'm like, what's up, man? And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, man. So anyway, I'm a business coach and I would love to help you out. And I'm like, oh, is this why I'm here?
You
And I was
got you.
like, no. And it was funny because like you had never gotten pushed to that limit to where I'm actually face to face with the person.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, this is terrible. And then I was just like, I like, we talked for 20 minutes. I was like, I don't need anything from you, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Dude, I took one of those courses and I regret it. Like it basically was just paid way too much money to confirm what I already knew and what I was
Yeah.
already doing. But I think there's more to building. Like that's what I really like about your content is like I like the brand. Like the brand recognition there is that I think that's huge. It's a slower grind,
Yeah.
but it pays off in the long run. Right. Like
Yeah.
like Ben Bruno, for example, like you look at him and it's like, that guy. Like that's a name that stands out, right? I think like Kyle Dobbs is getting to that point with compound performance. Like you
Yeah.
see that name, it has a power behind it, if you would. So the whole building, it's just hard. It's super hard to do. And that's
Yeah.
you gotta coach people while still like I'm a terrible secretary. Like I'm the worst secretary ever. But it's like I gotta be
Me
a
too.
coach, secretary. I gotta edit all my videos. I gotta think about all this. I'm like doing my accounting right now because I gotta pay my taxes. Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, me too. I'm super unorganized. Luckily, my girlfriend really helps me a ton with that because my
Good.
life would be my brother and my girlfriend really are the MVPs. I'm just a schlub in the middle, to be honest. They really hold me down in every way. Honestly, my whole life would be in flames. I don't know if you ever. I'd be like that one college picture of like the dude who's laying in his bed and his whole entire room is covered in like
Oh
dominoes.
God, dude. Yeah.
That's what my business would look like without my brother and my girlfriend. So I'm super
Jeez.
lucky with that.
Yeah, man. You don't see like what's in front of here. It's all everything's like pushed this way. So that way it's out of the camera. It's all like I got
Well,
like pelvis model.
I
I got
got a
two by
full
four.
filter here, so I got a background. Yeah, you don't
You're
even know.
hiding it all.
There's dominoes behind me right now.
Well, man, I'm gonna ask like one more question, just kind of pivot. So just one
Yeah,
more
whatever
time.
you need. I
Yeah.
got time.
So
Whatever you need.
I'm curious as you're definitely more of a mobility presence, right?
Yep.
Do you like where does, especially with like your longer term clients, like where does like strength training sort of play a factor? Like what are you really subscribing to when it comes to that? Like we've mentioned flowability. Obviously they have like their different techniques for deadlifts and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm just curious as though like are you using like a lot of periodization? Like what does that look like when you still have this focus of mobility, or you have these people coming in, they're like, hey, where's the FRC? And you're like, well, actually, I want you to go hit like a split squat. Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. So as of right now, as crazy as it sounds, I'd say mobility is about 5 to 10% of the equation. So I would probably say something similar. Just to give you an example, is I'll have someone do a hip car like five to 10 in a warm up. Or what I've been doing a lot lately that I really like is, and it kind of plays off of like what we talked about. We're like seeing the FRS strength model and being like, all right, well, how do they think about things? So it's like if you do a set of a hip car and you do three, there's a big difference between 3 and 5 because when you do 3, you can like really stay locked in. But when you do 5, especially if you do more than one set, it's kind of like it takes a little bit out of you, because FRC is so neurologically draining, especially if you're working at higher levels,
Mhm.
that like that is just as stressful as deadlifts in a way if they're really going after it. I mean, that's the whole point of FRC, is like, hey, we're working at such a high level that we're not doing the same stretching that you guys are. And like that's really what it is when you actually are really doing it. Like when I was really at FRC, I mean, I'm pooping my pants trying to irradiate and all that stuff. Like that's how you get the tissue changes that you want cold, is to actually put that effort in. Like some little 5 flimsy hip cars isn't going to give you the mobility that you're looking for. At some point, you need to have that max effort. And like even with what I'm going through with Alex right now, like we're getting to a point where like some clients are kind of like, hey, like, yeah, their rolling opens up 10 degrees of hip IR, but like they don't have it the next morning. They don't have it 2 weeks later. So what is missing? Well, it's the time under tension in a specific position, which is FRC's bread and butter.
Yeah.
And it's training both sides of the joint. It's just the positioning and putting a towel under them in a certain way that makes it that much better that I'm doing now. But back to the original question. So it might be 5 to 10% of stuff. I like to do like a tri set where like you'll do 3 hip cars, you'll do a split squat on your, you'll do front foot elevated on the left, you'll do rear foot elevated on the right, and then your third thing will be like a dynamic rotating, like a DNS side plank. So like that
Okay.
would be a really good example of a superset. You're cooking every single part of your hip capsule within that. You're getting the really good stuff from the asymmetrical split squat that you would get to recapture range of motion, and they're feeling like they're using their abs. So like that would be a good like little microcosm of how I'm programming things right now. With your question about the flowability deadlift, that's a great question and something that I love, to be honest, especially conceptually. I really just I don't think that anybody understands that you actually can get out of your spine. You know how people talk about deadlifting, they're like, well, in this one study, no matter what you did, you flexed your spine. And it's like, yeah, but if you watch, you know, the really good flowability people doing it, they're not using 225. That's for damn sure.
Right.
But I think if you slow mo that, maybe Alex would be like, "Nope, oh, I see a little counter nutation." You know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
other than him, like most people are gonna be like, "That back did not move, and it stays long." You know,
Mhm.
and I honestly think that again, like it's really funny because you know what's really funny about flowability is like a lot of the stuff that they talk about is like stuff that people have like soured on. Like for example, like everybody thinks serratus is the only answer to shoulder problems, and then they're
Right.
over there like, we train serratus only. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like, well, it's working for them, right? Or they'll be like, everybody's like, yo, you know, everybody obsesses about the glute med, not even that important. And it's like, yeah, but nobody has them. And then all of a sudden they do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, maybe you should have some meat up there in the top of your butt. Plus, aesthetically, it looks way better on women, in my opinion. But you know, maybe I'm in Miami. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I do, for example, with the deadlift is you have I'll use my client Carlos. So Carlos is a power lifter. He's one of the only power lifters I work with. So he's gonna have a deadlift day that he's gonna sumo deadlift. It's gonna look disgusting to me. I'm gonna say, Carlos, I hate the way your spine looks, but I'm happy you're so strong and happy. And
Right.
then on the next day, he's gonna go through a flowability workout and he's gonna finish with like end range holds with his sit bones high, with his reach, with like 20% of the weight that he would use on his powerlifting deadlift. So to me, like you've been saying, my whole entire scheme is long play. And that's why I don't train anybody for less than 12 weeks, because
Yeah.
like nothing's going to happen in 4 weeks when I'm trying to do 10 things at once. But if you're consistent over 12 weeks, we can get all of those things to improve. So that person is like getting really long. They're training up, like we said, they're training their top butt there, and then they're also training their rectors. I mean, we've had some days where it's like, yeah, you're gonna do bent over rows and back extensions in the same day, when 2 days ago you were not allowed to flex your lumbar spine for 75 minutes straight. You know, so
Yeah.
is and I've seen these people like really transform. Now, something that's important is you obviously aren't gonna be as flowability when you're only doing it twice a week or once a week. But you also are going to have quads. and you're gonna have delts, and you're gonna have a chest, and you're gonna have all those other things like the bicep, like all the stuff that's actually cool to me too, and
Mm.
to the person that originally came to you. Like nobody really comes to you like outside of that hyper specific, and they're like, I really just want top butts, and I would love for my quads to disappear. Like, no, that's not happening. You know what I mean? Like, people want like strength everywhere, and you can give that to them, and you can still train that hyper specific stuff. And then one last point on that, man. Like, again, I just I don't think anybody really understands what TVA is outside of flow. Like, I just don't see it. I don't see anyone ever getting to that level of tightness. And what's really funny, and again, we'll have to do the autopsy with Alex, but like I'll often show Alex what I see as TVA, and he'll go, "Oh, this is just a rectus strategy." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "All right, cool, man, cool." Like how? Because you see how long his spine is. You see, like his sternum hasn't dropped at all. Like, how is he in erector strategy? And it's just like, oh, never mind. I have four other things to go over. Let's get back to that later. You know,
Yeah.
like that's kind of what happens in our sessions. And I'll just be like, all right, forget it. Or it'll be someone who is still on erector strategy and I didn't see it yet. And I'll be like, yeah, all right, maybe on this person, but let me show you somebody else where they aren't. So, you know, it's a lot. But I really think that they train TVA like nobody else does. And that, you know, even like PRI, like exhale and pause, like nobody's getting the amount of air out, which is also part of the downfall for flowability. Because I've worked with a lot of people that have come to me and been like, my pelvic floor feels like it's going to explode because all I do is exhale really hard, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's where like Katie St. Clair, like her stuff and kind of like dealing with the pelvic floor, like again, it always falls back to that variability aspect. And but where I like flowability, I think it's something that's super beneficial for like narrows, like narrow ISAs. Like because like my big wide like power lifters, like they can just handle those compound lifts all the time. Like it, they're programmed. I'm lucky to get them to rotate at all. I sneak in my little accessory work and all that, but whatever. But like the narrows, it's like when you start to put them under load for longer periods of time, and I've noticed this myself, and just especially working with athletes too, like they just start to fall apart, like
Yeah.
by some point. But that's where I like the flowability because you're getting them to deadlift, which a narrow is going to need, but it's just you're getting that nutation. It looks good, and I like what you say too about like just the shapes they can kind of create, like in
Yeah.
flowability. Like no one else is doing that. But
Well, I think for the wide, sorry to cut you off, but I think for the wide, there's also, you can make the argument that the benefit is that end range of the exhale, because the
Mhm,
wide never accesses that, and especially the wides that are doing what they're naturally good at, which is powerlifting, because they're those people that just gulp
yep,
air all the time, so they've never really IR'd their ribs to that level.
mhm,
And like we just agreed, PRI isn't even IRing their ribs to that level.
right.
So I think that restores variability at the rib cage in itself by getting that. And then they're obsessed with the back ribs, so it's good to get expansion back there anyway. So I agree on both of those, and I think that you can also that's what I mean. You Once you get to know all these systems, like you can make an argument for
Yeah,
anybody.
it's just putting it, and that's talking about Bill stuff right there. Like Bill can tell you why something works from like the umbrella of his model. If
Yeah,
like I love his video about like the disc herniations and like using McGill exercises. He's like, this is why they feel good and why they help people. And he's like, I use them all the time. It's just I'm conceptualizing why like why it could work from the way I'm looking at the human body.
yeah,
And that's where, it's always just looking at this stuff. Like I like Alex, I like Bill, I like PRI from like an assessment and just like a biomechanics standpoint, neurology as well. If you want to like talk more PRI, and then it's like I don't care about the intervention. Like I'll do whatever exercise. Just let me.
yeah,
I can tweak it all day. But
yeah.
one last point. I'm curious more about the top butt and the glute med, man. So talk more about that, because I know that like that's a huge part, and especially like when I went through it, that was something I struggled with a ton. Like I could never get that without like a QL, and my
Yeah.
back would roast every time. So
Yeah.
if you can kind of go into that a little bit.
100%, 100%. So essentially, the way that this is as simple, it's really simple. So you basically have either your lower back or your glute med. And you really just walked into that, right? By just kind of proving my point right before I was going to say it. So that's good. So like, if you aren't going to push your lower back into the ground and find stability like that, there's something else that has to take the alley-oop. Now, they focus on the glute med, but they also do a really good job of saying, hey, it's all these muscles together. It's your pelvic floor, it's your it's everything,
Mhm.
right? But you need something back there that has some meat, and nobody has it. Like, if you look at all your assessments, there'll be so many people that just have nothing there. There's literally nothing. And then when you look at a sprinter, someone who's really elite athletically, they just got all this meat up there. It's like it's
Right.
slab.
Mhm.
So the other big thing that really ties the glute med home is when you go to PRI, when you look at other systems, oftentimes they'll be like, hey, guess what the glute med does? IR, right? Like these
Yeah.
fibers do this, these fibers do this. But either way, keep it simple. Say that it's hip rotation, that the glute med plays a role in hip rotation. Now, with that, in FRC, one of the things that happens to everybody when they do FRC is they cramp their TFLs out,
Right.
because FRC rarely emphasizes position.
Mhm.
It's always let's get it done no matter what. Yeah, there's some like, oh, let's compensation. Watch anybody do sidelining in FRC. I guarantee you their whole entire side's on the ground and they're have a lateral tilt. Every single person. As soon as you do that, boom, TFL. So when I started looking into PRI and stuff, I started noticing that PRI in a lot of ways is trying to get you out of your TFL and trying to get you into your glute med.
Right.
For someone at home who's not big on anatomy, we want the stuff behind your IT band to work more so than the stuff in front of your IT band,
Yeah.
which should
Back pocket over
resonate.
front pocket.
Exactly, which should resonate with the people who are saying, "Oh, my hip flexors are tight all the time," or "Oh, my TFL cramps out on everything," or "Oh, I
Yeah.
have knee pain." Right? So flow uses the glute med to rotate the hips in, and it uses the glute med to team up with the TVA. So when you have the TVA on the front and the glute med on the back, they stabilize and they suspend the lumbar spine, because the lumbar spine to them is like the gold thing in Indiana Jones. It's like it can't be moved, it can't be touched, right?
Yeah.
So they give you the muscle around that area to keep it there, because again, when we talk about training up, when you see someone who, like Alex would say, a pancake and everybody's flat, they're short too because they're compressed. But if
Right.
they're expanded, they're going to expand into the spine's natural curves, which is a flexed upper back and an extended lower back. So an
Mhm.
arch in the lower back, and then we know the neck. The neck, I know we're on a tangent now. The neck, I
All
love
right,
this
man.
stuff.
Keep
You can
going.
tell. The neck is the thing that I think really messes up people in flowability earlier, and I think that they've changed that. I don't know because I'm on the outside. Like I just recently got unblocked. I don't even look at the page anymore, honestly. But everything is chin tucked and pull long. So two things about the neck now that we're here. One, there's a huge difference between tucking your chin and pulling it down, and tucking your chin, or sorry, retracting your chin and then going up. So
Right.
Jordan uses a cue with the unicorn horn, or a man. I use the man bun because I'm in
Mhm.
Miami. Everybody's got a man bun on my bald mass, and you can pull your skull long after you pull it back. And that actually brings length and decompression, even though it's counterproductive to the PRI people that are like, no, you cannot flatten the neck ever, blah, 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 the airway, blah, blah, blah. It's like, cool. Or like PRI people, when they see an SEM, they're like, game over. That's it. Their
Yeah.
diaphragm's out of position. We're going hook line, right? Well,
Yeah.
like maybe it makes sense that if I was going to go up, my SCM would need to be strong and it would need to be able to stabilize my neck. And if I'm Conor McGregor, who is kind of like the poster boy of flowability, at least early on, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be here all the time, just like Jordan does boxing, I'm going to need strong SEMs to hold and support my neck. So there's just two ways of thinking about that in terms of the neck. Does all that make sense?
Yeah. The way I think about it is, okay, so maybe it is a compensation in terms of PRI, or what Alex would say. It still doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean that compensations are bad, right? It's just a strategy, if you would. So to have that SCM, or like, everything that you just talked about, like I don't look at that as being bad. And I just sort of relate this back to, like, I've been posting about like my experience with like the disc herniation I recovered from the past year. And
one of the biggest things with being a narrow ISA, having this disc herniation and years of lifting, is my inability to nutate the pelvis, right? And like even working with Alex, one of the big things we talk about is like, okay, like my deep hip external rotators are just locked down. Like I can't get into them at all. And it's one of the hardest things for a narrow to do, especially myself. Like I just want to clench my butt like crazy. But one of the things that probably helped me out the most when it came to rehabbing and just feeling better, like I wasn't even touching these muscles. I was like almost like going to let them atrophy, if you would. But I was like, you know what, screw this. And I went and jumped on the hip abduction and adduction machine. And I just started cranking them. Like I was like, screw it. Like I'm going to max this sucker out. And I just started hitting, and it's all hip abduction.
Yeah.
It's all those
Yeah.
muscles, those ERs. And just in my mind, like literally within a week, symptoms, I mean, they drop 60, 70%. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can actually sleep. I can actually do all this stuff. And, you would think that if I hit those muscles, I'm going to create more of a posterior compression on the back of that pelvis. But in my mind, I'm like, maybe they're so strong that I just needed to get some sort of stimulus, enough stimulus to stretch them out and just get some fucking blood flow, get some movement in those suckers in order to like tell my brain like it's okay.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to hold on to this.
I think that's where the training up is such an important conversation, because again, when you think about that pressure forward, compress forward, it's not a bad thing if you compress forward and pull up at the same time. Same thing with the neck. Everybody's so worried about flattening it out, but what are you worried about? The disc or the airway? Yeah, you're not going to live your life like that, but like if you pull back and up, what's going to happen at the disc? You're going to get length. Right. So whenever you're thinking up, you're getting length within the spine. So it totally changes everything. And to your point with the glute med, when you really get your top butt, like you can actually, like, I like to describe it to my clients as like twerking. So like if you see a girl twerking and you know how they can do one and the other, it's like when you get your glute meds, they both pop up. And what is they pop up? They're doing exactly what you're trying to do, which is open the back, right? Yep. And that's why you see all the flow people with the bigger butts, with the top butts, and all of the tissue around the sit bones is lengthened.
Right.
But and then again, this is why it's really funny when people like they confuse PRI and flowability, because like, don't stretch your hamstrings. Flowability stretches the fuck out of your hamstrings, right? But what they do is they stretch them with TVA. And that changes everything, because PRI is worried about you stretching your hamstrings and tilting your pelvis forward more and flaring your ribs up. But flowability has locked their ribs down so strong and so well that even when you're doing a hamstring stretch, it's really a TVA exercise, because you have to keep TVA in order to stretch the right way. Mm-hmm. So glute med pulls up, TVA stabilizes on the front, and then you can get that only quad exercise and everything to get you to stretch out the hamstring. And that brings length to where everybody's feeling tight down there in that hamstring area. But it's not a instability stretch like everybody thinks PRI from the PRI lens. It's a strength on top of stability, and then we stretch it.
Right. Well, and we always have to put the reminder too, like flowability is training.
Yes.
Like you're pushing, like you're playing around with these concepts, the shapes, all like weights and all, like it is training. You're pushing your body to different limits. Whereas PRI is a rehab protocol.
Yes.
Right. Like that's the biggest difference that I'm hearing there as well. It just, when you get into it, and we, especially like you and I, where we have people who they come to you and they're like, well, I'm in pain. I have this, I have that. And it's like, you have to be in this gray zone to be able to try to combine both worlds. Like, okay, they want to go here, and we always have that in mind, but we have this rooted foundation that is absolutely fantastic, but you got to break some rules on the way in order to take them to where, they're happy, they're enjoying what they do. They have they're moving, right? They're healthy. Like you're adding 10 years to their life, like versus just keeping them in this like little rehab realm in a way. But
and desensitizing movement and fear. Yes. And I think that's where that's where I've been using more FRC. Like, for example, when you start doing flowability, the spinal segmentation is like, it's like Jesus versus the devil. Like they're literally so far apart in terms of goals. Like it flows like, let's not make that move. Let's make everything else move. And then your FRC is like, let's move everything, you know?
Yeah.
So like that conflict right there took me so long to get over. But now one of the things that I think about is like, you have someone who I just had a week ago who can't move their neck because they've been told, don't move your neck, keep your chin tucked. A neck car is like mind-blowing to them because it's like, hey, A, you have permission to move your neck. B, now you're moving your neck, and now it no longer feels so tight because, hey, like it's a normal thing to move your neck. So you can move your neck. And I know, right? And the thoracic car is phenomenal, like in terms of FRC. And I know we already talked about this, but the thoracic car and the hip car and the shoulder car and the ankle car. And since working with Alex, the tibial rotation one, I brought that back a lot too. But basically, those are really the top ones. And then one more thing, the FRC is really great. When you meet someone that has a wrist issue, you don't go, oh, I mean, you could, but you don't go, oh, I can't wait to give them this breathing drill. You go, guess what? Your wrist sucks. We got to hammer that shit. You do pails and rails for 3 weeks. I got to tell you, so many people are pain-free, no wrist issues. They do push-ups, move on, because that's what FRC gives you. Is it gives you the ability to work on the parts. And that is so valuable, even from a coaching's perspective, to just feel confident and have someone come and be like, hey, my ankle needs some work. All right, well, I know I can at least give you ankle cars, and it should make a 5% difference minimum. You know what I mean?
Movement's always going to help. Like that's the thing. Like it doesn't matter if it's with breathing, if it's always going to help. That's just whenever we limit movement, that's when stuff arises. Like that's really what happens. And pain or whatever you want to call people getting in their own head too, I would say with a lot of that.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor.
Oh yeah, that's a huge factor. I wish we could just like instill in all like elementary schools that like the gym teachers would teach like, hey, like movement is meant to be just free and fantastic, and it's such a good thing, and just like hammer that into kids at like a young age. So that way when they grow up and they start like actually working out and doing all this stuff, like they just have that instilled. I think that would like,
which is ironic because most people, or not most people, but a lot of people have like the worst memory of gym class. Like it's a traumatic event.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Yeah. Like I met some people that like, you know, they were getting wedgies in gym class. So it was not a good time for them.
I don't know, man. If you were good at dodgeball.
Exactly.
That was me. I was fast. I played baseball. I was like, oh man, this is my jam. Like I'm going to just wail on people.
Yeah, me too. I loved it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, man, I think we're going to call it there. That was absolutely fantastic. Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show. How about we do a quick little, side, where can we find you? Give us your plug if you want to be found, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, it's IANMARKOW. We also have our business page, which is Markow Training Systems. So MARKOW Training Systems. We're on YouTube. You can just search my name. It'll come up. If you're interested in the FRC stuff, that's where you're going to kind of find the cars and everything. Just go on there. If you want to take class with us, just go to our website, markowtrainingsystems.com. You can see the EVMs there for classes. If you're a coach, then you would go on to Mobility Coach Plus. We actually have, you probably know him, Greg Hawthorne's coming on today to present.
Nice.
So that's cool. That's where I'm going right after this. But yeah. And if anybody has any questions, just hit me up. I'm a normal human being, so just send me a DM. Don't email me because, like we said, my emails are lost under those Domino's pizzas. So just, I don't really eat. I don't eat Domino's either, too. Maybe like it's a better one, like Luke Holiday or something. How about
there
that?
You go.
There you go. But I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, man. Hey, you take care, and we will see you all in the next one.